Well, this is it. This was the movie that Marvel promised that they had been building to since the first Iron Man. Avengers Infinity War. Now, this is a pretty big movie. A lot of things happen, so I'll try and sum it up as best I can. Thanos is on a quest to gather the 6 Infinity Stones. Time, mind, space, reality. Hold on. Reality, time, space, mind, soul, and probably something else that I'm forgetting about. But, anyways, Thanos, as we saw in the mid-credit scene in Thor Ragnarok, just destroyed Thor's ship and killed half the people on there, including Loki and Heimdall, and he beat the crap out the Hulk. And Hulk's the strongest one there is, so Thanos beating the crap out the Hulk, that's saying something. But before Heimdall died, he was able to transport the Hulk out of there, where he crash landed into Doctor Strange's New York Sanctum. And that's when he warns that Thanos is coming. This is when we have Doctor Strange trying to gets Iron Man's help in order to stop, the invading aliens from trying to gather the remaining Infinity Stones, because Doctor Strange has the Time Stone. Thanos already has the Space and Power Stone already. The only ones that are left are the Time Stone, which Doctor Strange uses, which is technically the Eye of Agamotto, but still. There's the Soul Stone, which is on another alien planet. There's the Reality Stone, which is still in the Collector's Vault, even after the events of Guardians of the Galaxy. There's also the Mind Stone, which is currently embedded in Vision's head. And so, while a group of the Avengers decide that they're going to go to Titan, which it also includes Spider-Man and the Guardians of the Galaxy in there too, although Spider-Man's technically made an Avenger by Iron Man, and the other group is currently in Wakanda trying to be able to save Vision, Thanos is trying to collect all the Infinity Stones. But, yeah, this is a very hard movie to sum up, and with all these separate things going on, how do we connect them together? What is probably the best Marvel villain we've ever got. Josh Brolin as Thanos is one of the most intriguing and complex villains we've ever gotten in the past few years. And the thing is, everybody was thinking that Thanos was just going to be a big letdown because they've been building him up for over 6 years. But he didn't. What many people thought would be the weakest link is the best part of this movie. The thing is, we understand why Thanos is doing what he's doing. His motivation is very different from the comics, where in this he wants to be able to restore balance to the universe because he just wants to be able to make sure that people live prosperous lives. In the comics, he wanted to impress the physical embodiment of death. This is probably a much better motivation than the one in the comics, but that's just my opinion. Not only that, but we also get to understand how Thanos is just not by what he says, but by his facial expressions. Like, for example, this will include spoilers, the scene where he ends up trading Gamora's life for the Soul Stone, his facial expressions tell you everything. And not only that, but the visual effects are absolutely amazing. Thanos is like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Sure, we still know he's CGI, but he looks real. He feels real. He's there, interacting with all these other characters. He's the one that links them all together. This is Thanos' story. This is how he's doing this. We see him from point A to point B and how he's succeeding. In fact, even though it's not told from his point of view, there was actually the idea that it was going to be told from Thanos' point of view, which would have made the movie even more interesting. And not only that, but there were so many different ways about how this movie could have gone. This movie could have potentially ended with just seeing Thanos snap his fingers and the screen going white, and that would have been it. That's all you would have seen. You wouldn't have known who lived, who died. You would have had to wait till Avengers 4. But they actually did. But they actually did do that. But they didn't do that. They showed you who lived and who died. Not only that, but what makes this movie also really great is seeing all the characters interact with one another. Doctor Strange and Tony Stark have been told to be very similar to one another, so of course they don't get along with each other. Thor and Star-Lord are both seen as cocky warriors, so they both try and one-up one another. It's very interesting. But not only that, but Spider-Man and Iron Man sort of have a father-son bonding relationship. It's very interesting to see how all of these characters interact and connect with one another. And and a lot of critics complained about how there wasn't really any solid introduction to these characters. That was the point. We already had movie upon movie upon movie just giving you their backstory, telling you what's going on, who they are. We don't need an introduction. All we need to see is how these characters are going to deal with this situation. And not only that, but the ending battle of Wakanda and the battle on Titan is absolutely amazing. And one of the best superhero entrances is when Thor comes in with Stormbreaker, which is awesome. Man, I gotta talk about how this movie is incredible. Wow. There's so much to enjoy about this movie. In fact, I probably think that this is Marvel's best. Mainly because of the character interactions and the villain. Here's the thing. I want to give this a 10 out of 10. I do. But we don't know how this is going to turn out. We need to see Avengers Endgame to see how all of this is going to pan out. And you know how they originally announced this as a two-parter, but then they came and said, no, this isn't a two-parter? They lied to us. Marvel is the best when it comes to screwing with their audience. Like, for example, you know how when the first trailer came out for Infinity War, we saw Hulk in the Battle of Wakanda? Nope, that didn't happen. And man, the Russo brothers in Marvel, they're really great at keeping secrets. In fact, nobody got an entire Endgame script, except for one person. Robert Downey Jr. was the only person who actually got the full script. Wow. So yeah, I think I might have to give my rating for Infinity War after my review of Endgame comes out, because I don't know if I can be able to get this, because we need to see how this all pans out. So yeah, this concludes the spoiler-free section. Now we go into the spoilers. When Bucky first turned to dust, that's when I realized, oh no, something's wrong. And then every single Guardian of the Galaxy except for Rocket died. Almost all of the new characters died, and probably the most hardest to watch was when Spider-Man died, which apparently was actually improv by Tom Holland with some encouragement by Robert Downey Jr. And I actually didn't think about it until I saw this YouTube comment. It said that Tony was exactly where he was 10 years ago at the beginning of the first Iron Man. He was alone in a desert with shrapnel in the air. It all comes full circle. And after something so devastating happens, when Captain America, the most optimistic out of all of them, can only do nothing but whisper, something big and terrible has happened. And not only that, but with Thanos' saying of, I will eventually rise, I will eventually succeed, and I will just watch sunrise on a universe. Or something like that. On a new universe or something like that. We see the final scene before the credits. It's just him staring off into the sunset. And we potentially see him smile. And the thing is, a lot of people blame Star-Lord for why the plan failed. The Russo brothers came in and said, don't just blame Star-Lord, blame Thor. As Thanos stated, he could have gone for the head, but he didn't, because he was too upset over Loki's death, so he let pride get the better of him, and something like that. Thor should have either cut off his entire arm, or should have gone for the head. But he didn't do that because he let Loki's death and all the other Asgardians on that ship get in the way of his better judgment. And all the other Marvel movies that had come out at that point had like little animated credit sequences that go with the tone of their films. This one, just white text against the black background. Those were the entire credits. And then after all that, we see our final credit scene. Oh. I'm in the middle of filming. Can you give me a minute? Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that, everybody. That was my dad. But anyways, when we see Maria Hill and Nick Fury for the first time since Age of Ultron, we're like, where have these guys been? And then we see them directly dealing with the aftermath of what's going on. And then we see Maria Hill turn to dust. And that's when we see Nick Fury grab for something as he turns to dust. As what a lot of people have dubbed the decimation. And eventually we see who he was summoning. It was Captain Marvel. Ooh, man. What a huge cliffhanger to leave on. And apparently Endgame is supposedly going to take place 22 days after the events of this. And also, you know how I said the fact that this was supposed to be the culmination of everything that's been going on and they were going to bring every hero together? 2 heroes were excluded. Hawkeye and Ant-Man. Which I'll get into because I decided the fact that I'm going to get it out of the way, so I'm also going to do a review of Ant-Man and the Wasp in this as well. But Hawkeye, according to the writers or directors, they were very much left out on purpose. But anyways. So yeah, that was Avengers Infinity War, and now I just need something more lighthearted. So we're just going to cover Ant-Man and the Wasp now. Now, sadly, I did not see this in theaters. I so desperately wanted to, but I didn't. Now, this is supposed to take place before the events of Infinity War. Scott Lang is still under house arrest for the events of what happened in Captain America Civil War, and he's trying to help out Hope Van Dyne and Hank Pym as they try and see if they could be able to bring back their mother, played Janet Van Dyne, the original Wasp, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, while also trying to be able to figure out what to do with Ghost, who has a backstory that's tied directly to Hank Pym. So, yeah. Let's discuss Ant-Man and Wasp. First off, love the levity of the situation, because after something so dark and depressing like Infinity War, we really needed that. And sure, Infinity War had a couple funny jokes in here and there, but that was to take your mind off about how depressing and terrible the situation was. Very glad the fact that this actually had more of a lighter tone. And, of course, Paul Rudd as Ant-Man is still awesome. Evangeline Lilly, I did like her as the Wasp. I thought she was good. Everybody does a really, really good job. The villain was actually very decent, but if she hadn't come after all of those other villains, we probably would have praised her a little bit more, but I think she did a good job. All supporting characters from Michael Douglas as Hank Pym to Michelle Pfeiffer's Janet Van Dyne to Michael Pena, and I think as Michael Douglas put in Ant-Man, the Wombats, they were also great too. But I am sad the fact that we only got to see Luis do his story thing one time, but I am glad the fact that they still did it because they didn't want to overkill it. I also really liked Randall Park's role in this. I thought he was great in this too. The shrinking technology, while not as impressive as the first film, is still good. And not only that, but it's the first major superhero film that doesn't end with like this big battle. It just ends with the car chase. And you know what? That actually seems really nice. And it sort of feels like one of those sort of like 60s, 70 comedies, like, you know, like Don Knotts or The Love Bug, you know, one of those kinds of movies. And the thing is, they're trying to sort of lean into that 70s vibe, because we see Scott earlier, he's watching Animal House, in which they're high, and they're talking about how there's the possibility about how there's tiny little universes and everything. That directly plays into this, and that's actually really interesting, because I really wish that they probably would have gone into that vibe a little bit more, but that's just me. But, yeah. Then the mid-credits stinger. This actually takes place during the events of Infinity War, as we see Scott, he's gathering stuff from the quantum realm because Ghost has a condition that causes her to phase in and out, and she needs more materials from the quantum realm in order to remain stable. However, when Scott entered, he became stuck because Hope, Janet, and Hank all disintegrated in the decimation. They all died, leaving Scott stranded there. I wonder how this is going to play out in Endgame. And yes, I have very much heard about the Thanos butt theory, and I do not think that's going to happen. In fact, I'm pretty sure the directors of Endgame stated the fact that's probably the weirdest theory they've ever heard so far. But, Ant-Man the Wasp, while it isn't as good as the first Ant-Man, still fine. So, yeah, I would give it a solid 8 out of 10. Finally, I'm done with these videos. So, tune in next time for the next video I will be covering. Will be a review of Avengers Endgame. Stay tuned for that. And I might actually do something different, as I might bring on a special guest. Who that guest is, you'll have to find out next week. And as always, stay cold.